thrown for the end zone. Touchdown, Parker. Liftoff. Finds Xavier Howard. Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! That hard work.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? We got a good one tonight. I'm super excited to be joined by Ryan Roberts of the NFL Draft Bible. Thank you for joining tonight, sir. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate you for having me on.
It's my pleasure, man. I'm so excited about this one because, guys, if you can look below and you can go follow Ryan on Twitter at RiseN Draft. He's honestly one of the best draft follows out there. He does great work. He has great interviews with prospects. He is really worth the follow. Trust me, whether now or after the show, make sure you go follow this man on Twitter. You will enjoy it. Trust me. All right. So I'm just going to ask you, are you excited? Because we're about to get into free agency and draft season. It's almost like Christmas is around the corner, eh?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's good, too, because as soon as you get a little bit of free agency action, you get kind of more clarity on what teams might be looking for, where teams might be eyeing in the draft. So you get a little more of a comprehensive look. And, you know, draft day is like Christmas in my household. So the quicker we can get there, it's kind of like you take a step back and you did all the hard work, right? Like you laid the foundation, then you just sit back and you just kind of see how it unfolds. So it's a ton of fun.
I love it. All right, so let's jump into it. Let's start off with last year's draft a little bit. What was your pre-draft evaluation of Tua Tagovailoa last year heading into the 2020 draft?
I love Tua. I really did, man. If injuries weren't in the equation, I still believe that Tua would have been right on par with Joe Burrow in that conversation for the top pick overall. I really firmly believe that. I have been on record that if Tua doesn't last in the NFL, I think that it is going to be injury related, not performance related. I think that he, from a timing perspective, from an accuracy perspective, from a command perspective, the kid is quick, the kid is sharp, gets the ball out fast. He's got a little something to him athletically. I know a lot of people are saying like, hey, you might need to change the way you play a little bit because of the injury background, which I agree with to a degree. But for me, he's stacked up right there with Burrow and Herbert and that whole class last year. It's just the question marks of a long-term outlook for a guy like Tua.
And I got another little question off that. If he would have returned this year, you look at what Mac Jones did, and I think we could probably both agree Tua Tagovailoa is a better quarterback prospect than Mac Jones. You know, it's probably fair to say they would have still won the national championship if he would have stayed healthy, even if not because of the way Mac played. And he might have actually been the one that have won the Heisman instead of Devontae Smith because he's just, you know, we could have seen close to 50 touchdown passes at the rate that offense is rolling this year. Let me put you in a hypothetical. If he would have returned this year, let's take the Heisman out. If he would have returned this year and they would have won the national championship and been on the same trajectory as they was, just with him there, do you think he could have gone ahead of Trevor Lawrence?
I don't think so. I think that he definitely would have been the odds-on favorite if he put a full healthy season on and the production that you're talking about. I think he's the odds-on favorite to finish at the second quarterback this year. I just think from everything that I've seen of Trevor Lawrence, from a maturity perspective, from a physical gift perspective, like I think that he's the no-brainer number one quarterback, the number one pick in the draft this year. And I think that he's the best quarterback that I have personally ever evaluated because I didn't obviously get a chance to watch Andrew Luck dating back to when he was coming out of Stanford. So I still think that Trevor Lawrence is the unquestioned number one guy, at least for me. But I do think that Tua, when you compare him to guys like Justin Fields and Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, like I think that he had probably a firm footing to be the second overall quarterback.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. And just keeping up with Trevor Lawrence for a sec, were you as concerned as I was when I was watching this guy in the red zone at his pro day?
I mean, so like the pro days, I got kind of a mixed bag feeling on the pro day in general, right? Like I mean, the kid was slinging it. It's so funny because everyone's like, why did he even need to go to the pro day? Because he rolls out of bed and he could throw a football like nobody else can, right? Like he goes out there probably without even a warm up if he wanted to. He could throw it around as good as anybody can. The biggest concern for you is with how he plays is my man is light. Like he needs to put on a little bit of mass, but he's got the frame to do it. But I mean, with how reckless he plays sometimes, doesn't choose to slide, like he definitely needs to bulk up and fill out that frame a bit. But for me, like it was another check mark for me. Like you watched him throw the football, you saw some of the things that he could do, which are absolutely insane. Nobody needed to see him throw, but the fact of the matter is the guy's great at throwing, so why wouldn't he throw?
Yeah. And he's just like Burrow. He's got that sneaky athleticism that can just creep up on you and really make you pay too, right? All right. So, looking back on this past year, especially the South Floridian media, there's a big divide going on between Dolphin fans. And, we feel like we're up against the South Floridian media because, they've been the ones along with they really put it into the national media's, voice box. A lot of us think of this whole Tua narrative of, maybe we got to be looking at other options. At first, if you remember, the question was, are we going to draft a quarterback at number 3? And then Watson's situation started. And now they've just gone full blown ahead with Watson. I got to ask you, is that fair for these guys to be out on a quarterback as talented and as gifted as Tua Tagovailoa after 9 games? When you look at the circumstances he came in, where I know you probably watched every snap he had at Alabama. You could look at him and say, that's not his football body. That's a rehab body. He's playing at about 210 this year when usually I believe at Alabama, he's playing at about 217. He didn't have that ripped upper half. You could tell at times he didn't trust the protection. He didn't trust his receivers because the drops were absolutely ridiculous. And I think there was times where he didn't trust his body because of how traumatic that injury. This isn't an ACL tear. This is a traumatic injury he was dealing with. Do you think it's fair to move off a quarterback as talented of a prospect as he is after 9 games? And what do you think about the whole Watson Tua thing going on?
It's interesting when you throw in the Watson conversation, just because like every team outside of maybe, the Kansas City Chiefs and maybe one other, what should be in the conversation of bringing in a guy like Deshaun Watson, because he is one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the NFL. So everybody can technically upgrade when you're talking about Deshaun Watson outside of a couple teams. So like it's an interesting conversation. To answer your question, I think it's very hyperbolic to just get to that point with the Tua situation. I mean, you see so many guys struggle as rookies. And to be quite honest, I didn't think Tua struggled that much. Like obviously the last game of the season is what is on everybody's mind, right? Like they saw that and they were like, wow, like we had a chance to make the playoffs potentially. And we got blown out by the Bills and Tua had his worst game of the season. But when you take the full scope of everything that happens, he has a winning record as a starting quarterback. He doesn't turn the ball over very much, even with that last game. He has flashes of really good stuff. For me, it's as a top 5 quarterback. Now the coaching staff needs to evaluate the roster and evaluate what's going on, because the offensive line struggled down the stretch. The wide receivers, like you're saying, like Devontae Parker had a nice season 2 years ago. He still has his flashes of really nice stuff. Preston Williams, I know, was kind of showing out early on and during his rookie year. But you don't have any guys that create a ton of separation. These are all jump ball, 50-50 ball guys with a young quarterback. Trust sometimes is a tough thing to come by when you don't see a guy get enough of a separation aspect to the game. So I think that you need to evaluate everything. You need to get some playmakers there. You need to get a real running back to couple now with a guy like Myles Gaskin, who showed some good flashes, right? But he's more of a situational player that should not be a lead ball carrier by any stretch in the NFL. So you need to upgrade the running back position. You need to upgrade the offensive line position, in theory as well, too. You need to definitely upgrade the wide receiver position to at least get some speed in that unit. So the criticism, I think, is overblown. I think it's hyperbolic. I think Tua is going to be just fine as long as he stays healthy. It's now about putting the pieces around him. So how quickly forget the struggles that some quarterbacks have as rookies. And when you put up Tua's struggles against a lot of these other quarterbacks, was not nearly as much. So I think Tua is going to be just fine.
Yeah, because, I posed the question, and I guess I'll ask you this, because, you're around the media, you're around a lot of scouts, you're around a lot of people who just watch tape. if you just put up the statistics, okay, and I'm not a stat line watcher, but let's just put it very eerily similar to what Burrow did in his limited time before he got hurt, okay?
Sure.
He tore every alphabet letter in his knee, okay? And yet no one's talking about the Bengals wanting to move off of him, but everyone's talking about the Dolphins moving on. You see where I'm going with this? Like, it just doesn't add up. Like, why aren't we holding another guy like that to a standard? And another thing that a lot of Tua doubters and haters say is, well, he got benched. Well, I know you'll remember this. John Elway got benched in his rookie season. I mean, do you really put a lot of stock into the benching? And what do you think about the Burrow thing that I pose?
Yeah, I definitely don't look. I mean, so for me, the benching was more of a negative on the coaching staff for me. Like, I'm watching and I'm saying, like, you're not going to let like, I understand there was some talk about, like, oh, he may have been, gimpy a little bit, right? Like, he might have been injured. For me, it showed a lack of confidence for me. Like, I wanted them to, like, if you're starting a rookie quarterback, there's going to be some struggles. Stick with him. Let him get through the fire, like sink or swim time, So I think that was more a reflection on the coaching staff, although I am a big supporter of Brian Flores. I really do have a high opinion of him as a head coach. But I do think that a lot of it's unfair. It's the two things that you remember about Tua's year is, one, getting benched, and two, the final game. So people, again, are going to cling to that recency bias of that last game. And, I mean, like you said, right, like there are some question marks about – now, what's Burrow's long-time outlook? Because the thing about Joe Burrow is he came out well-seasoned and had some good stuff, obviously, for Cincinnati before he got hurt. But, I mean, I think he was 24 years old as a rookie. Tua's, 21 now? Like, he's still young. He still has time. Now Burrow has a little bit of a question mark with injuries as well. So I think that we definitely need to be holding players accountable more. I just think that for Tua, it's just how the season ended on a near playoff team. And a lot of people think that, and this is very unfair, that they should have stayed with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and it was a dumb move on their part to go to Tua when Fitzpatrick's playing pretty well and the team's rolling. And I always disagree with that so much, because that should have been the whole plan all along, is work to the bye week and then get Tua in the game, because you did draft him top 5. Like, he's going to play football as long as he's healthy. But I just think that when you couple all those things together, that forces people to evaluate it and overanalyze it to a degree.
All right. So before we get into the draft here, there's a lot of smoke surrounding Aaron Jones to Miami right now. And over the past couple of days, Kenny Galladay has started to, steam is starting to pick it up with Kenny to Miami. Just quickly, your thoughts on Aaron Jones, the running back, and Kenny Galladay, the wide receiver.
I mean, it's a rumor season, so I even heard Chris Carson to Miami potentially as well. For me, Aaron Jones is exactly what Miami needs, though. Like, that guy is not only a very good running back, but he is a space player too. He can catch the football. Like, he is that dynamic player that Miami does lack. The question, though, and I'm not a big proponent of paying running backs big money. Like, that's just not my style. Like, I'm a guy that, like, hey, I want to cycle in running backs every 3 or 4 years in the draft and just kind of keep developing in-house, so I don't have to really go to a second ridiculous contract. Like, that's kind of my philosophy on it. But Aaron Jones, if you get him in the building, like, that kid is a special athlete. Like, he absolutely is. And he would help this team dramatically early on. Kenny Galladay, on the other hand, like, he's a very good wide receiver. He's probably a top 10 wide receiver in the game. Would he be an upgrade over either Preston Williams or Devontae Parker, in my opinion? Absolutely, if he's healthy. There's no doubt about it. I just don't want that to be the only move. Even if they get him, I still need them to find speed in the draft somewhere, because he's still that same type, right? Like, he's still the Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, big body, 50-50 guy, can win vertically, but wins more with his length than actually winning with athleticism. So I need to see the speed element added in, but Kenny Galladay is obviously a very good wide receiver. So make the wide receiver room better in Miami. That's the first and foremost thing to do. But I don't think that stylistically he's probably what you 100% need in the wide receiver unit.
All right, let's get into the draft and let's talk about the wide receiver position. I'm just going to throw it at you. Who's your wide receiver 1?
Jamar Chase has been. I'm not leaving off that. I am not, budging off my evaluation of Jamar Chase. It's recency bias again, because you didn't see he was an opt-out guy in 2020, obviously. My guy at 19 years old had arguably the greatest wide receiver season in college football history, and on a team that had Justin Jefferson, who just set the rookie receiving record, and Terrace Marshall Jr., who might be a first-round pick this year in the draft, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Thaddeus Moss, and all of these great playmakers all over the place. He was the unquestioned top playmaker on that offense. Unquestioned. Is he a flashy player all the time? Because people obviously fall in love with speed, like Jalen Waddle has, for instance, which I'm a big fan of Jalen Waddle as well, by the way. But they kind of lose sight of the fact of the alpha mentality for the wide receiver position is so important. That guy wins 50-50 balls so much, only being about 6 foot, 205, 210 pounds, because he plays with that aura about him where the ball is his when it's in the air. It's just his ball. So for me, there is a great wide receiver class, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, a lot of great guys. Jamar Chase is the guy for me that when the ball's in the air, he's going to get it. He's a special playmaker. I would draft him top 5 to 10 without even thinking twice about it.
Does he fall into what you were kind of talking about with Galladay, Parker, and Preston, where we kind of need the speed, the guys who can stretch the field or take the top off? We don't need more contested ball guys.
Well, I think that he does kind of fit into that mold a little bit. I have seen him, though, uncover himself deep down the field because he's a great ball tracker and he has this second burst down the field, this acceleration. I think that he would be a good fit in Miami. Do I think he would be the best fit necessarily for Miami? No, I don't think so. But I think that if you have a chance to get Jamar Chase in Miami, which I actually gave them in a recent mock draft, I have him trading back from 3 with the Philadelphia Eagles to 6, and at 6 taking Jamar Chase. I think you do it because I think that he is very special. He fits what the Miami Dolphins need, just in fact of upgrading. But I don't think that necessarily he is the perfect fit for what they want. But he is, instantly, he is your top receiver on the roster and the most talented player that you have at the position.
So you're going to hate me.
Yep.
Because, I do my big boards. Every year I do 5 big boards, but based on our needs, what we need at the position, the position we need, and then what we need at the position. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I actually, for what we need, I had him ranked 4.
Okay.
I had Waddle at 1. I had Smith at 2. And this was before the 4.37, 4.39 at the Exos. I got Bateman at 3.
Interesting. Okay.
If he runs 4.37 though, I might have to move him up that one a little bit at 6.2. I wanted to ask you though. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Justin Jefferson, right? Yep. He was listed by LSU at 6'3". He came in at 6'1". All right. Mm-hmm. The size thing with Devontae, I don't really worry about because you saw the picture of Devontae, Jefferson, and Chase, right? The three of them standing together. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I don't know if you saw it, but Waddle. Jefferson and Smith, their frames looked, even down to the legs, looked like almost identical. And then number 2, is it just me, or if they're 6'1", doesn't Jamar Chase look about like 5'11" in that picture?
It definitely appeared that way. And I know Twitter kind of erupted a little bit because, like you said, he's listed at 6'1". Is he even 6 foot? We have him estimated right around 6 foot. For me, I'm not really too worried if it's like 5'11 3/4 or 5'11 1/2. Like, I'm not too worried about it. I would say it definitely did look like it in the picture, but we know pictures can be deceiving sometimes. Until I'm in front of him, looking eye to eye with him, I don't want to make the assumption. I'm going to wait until the pro day to see what he measures in at. But even if he is 5'11 3/4 or whatever it might be, I'm not personally too worried about that.
What do you think he's running?
I mean, he was on Feldman's freak list where they said that he's been timed at a official 4.4 flat. I don't think he's going to run quite that fast. I would say he's going to be like a 4.42 to 4.45 guy, somewhere in there.
Okay. If he busts out and runs a 4.5, and he measures in at 5'11", will that affect his draft stock? Not with you, but with the NFL?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would make at least evaluators go back to the tape, right? Because the thing with times and testing in general is, everybody's going to overreact on Twitter, but it's always for everyone. It should be verification, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think the guy is fast and he runs 4.3, well, okay, you saw exactly what you should be saying. You shouldn't be bumping him up. Like, that should just be what your evaluation was. That was what I saw. But if I think a guy's fast, right? And then he runs so Jalen Waddle, let's use him for the example for this one. Like if I watch his tape and I write down 4.32, like that's what I think he's going to run. And then he goes down there and runs like 4.47, 4.48. Then for me, I might need to go take a second look. That doesn't mean I'm wrong. That just means that that's the verification process where I have to make sure that I did see what I saw. So I never bump guys up with the testing numbers. I never really bump guys down either. For me, it's just either one, that verifies I saw exactly what I saw, or two, I need to take a second look because there might be something that I'm missing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just being facetious. My receipt's already out there. I can't change that board. I already did a video and everything. I'm locked in. So from 2 to 5, how do you rank the rest of the field? We don't have to get into the 6 through 10, but I may ask you about a few players. How do you rank out 2 to 5? And I love how you brought up Terrace Marshall because, man, he might be a steal, man. He might be a sleeper steal in this draft.
Yeah. No, he's especially for the vertical element that he has, being 6'3", like there's a lot of tools to work with Terrace Marshall. For me, the top 5 is Chase. I have Jalen Waddle at number 2. I love Jalen Waddle. For me, he's the best Alabama wide receiver, in my opinion. Put Devontae on there. I have my reservations about Devontae. I am a little scared of him, to be honest, but the kid keeps producing.
What sense are you scared of him?
Because it's not that he can't be successful if he's 170 pounds, right? Like that's what people are going to be talking about.
Yeah.
It's the fact of when you look historically at the numbers to back this up and you say, how many guys have been 6 foot and 170 pounds of being successful in the NFL? There's nobody. Like it's not a list. So although I do think he's going to be successful and I think he's going to be a very good football player, the fact of the matter is if he's successful, he is an outlier. Like no matter what, he is an outlier. So I do have some reservations and I do have, I'm a little terrified of him, to be honest. You know, I like him. He's a first round grade. He's a top 3 wide receiver in this class. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. There's so many things he has going for him, but I struggled with him, to be very honest with you. And then I almost had Rashad Bateman above him just because I really do like Rashad Bateman a ton. I didn't need to see him run 4.3 something. I expect him to run like 4.46-ish, 4.47.
That's exactly where I was at too.
Right.
With him.
Yeah. That's what I pictured in my mind. So whatever, like the 4.37, that's nice. You know, some combine numbers are going to be questioned this year.
Yeah, for sure.
I love Rashad a bunch. And then if the injuries were not in the equation at all, Rondelle Moore for me from Purdue is someone that people just keep forgetting about because he is a special football player.
Yep.
He really is. He is so physically gifted. He's a legit 4.3 guy. That guy is an Energizer bunny. He breaks tackles. There's so much I like about Rondelle Moore. The question is going to be, how is that body going to hold up? Because he's had a couple injuries during his career already. Obviously, the knee injury that cost him the majority of 2019. So we need to see what the long-term outlook is for him. But when he's on the field and he's right, that kid is a special football player and a first-round player.
Yo, we have literally the same top 5. Just Chase is like inverted there, but we literally have the same guys in the top. Like this is a Rondelle Moore fan channel, okay? Like that man he is bricked up right now, my friend. Like, geez, Louise, he looks like my regular co-host made the comparison of Steve Smith 2.0, and I don't know if I can really argue him. Like, damn, even down to the body size, right? Loves the physicality, takes it on, no problem, and he sheds tackles at a ridiculous rate. I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts of? I know he had his pro day today. What are your thoughts of Amari Rodgers?
I like Amari for the role that he plays. You know, he's not. So he's a slot only wide receiver just because of his size. The weird part about him is usually those slot guys like the Jalen Waddles of the world are super quick, in and out of breaks, tremendously fast, smooth in and out of breaks. Amari Rodgers isn't that type of slot. He's more of a Golden Tate type of guy who is straight line fast, breaks a ton of tackles, but he's not the quickest slot in the world. But then you also have, he has a dynamic element to him. He's a smart kid. He's been around football his entire life. His father is actually T. Martin that played quarterback at the University of Tennessee. So he's been around the game. He's super smart. He understands leverage. He understands blind spots. He understands how to attack defensive backs. And then after the catch, turns into a running back. And you even saw some people talking about, he took some snaps at running back today just to kind of, I guess, see what the body type that he has. So he's not the traditional slot type, but I really do like how he plays football. And he's a really nice punt returner. Kind of compares a little bit to Devin Duvernay that came out of Texas last year. They're both kind of similar in the same sense of, hey, they're not the quickest guys out of breaks. They're not the, short area quickness guys, but they have a nice level of speed and then physicality to them after the catch.
And I just wanted to point out for people in the comments, I totally understand where Ryan's coming from with what he says about Devontae Smith, because you got to understand, guys who scout, guys who watch tape like Ryan, you are taught to look for patterns. Patterns are a big, big thing, and that's why he brought up what he brought up with Devontae Smith, because, really, other than, Marvin Harrison was quite light. He was like 180 when he came out. Isaac Bruce was like 173, but how many other guys can you really name, right, that were successful? So, okay, so I want to get your thoughts on Penei Sewell.
Yep. Oh, he's the best offensive tackle I've ever evaluated, to be honest. Like, I think
better than worse.
Yeah, no, I have him above all the guys last year's, the Mekhi Bectons, the Tristan Wirfs, the Jedrick Wills. I value his skill set higher than them. Obviously last year's tackle class was exceptional up top, Andrew Thomas included in that. But I think that the total package that Penei Sewell has from a physical perspective, the size, the length, the athleticism, this guy was, in my opinion, the best offensive tackle in college football in 2019 at 19 years old. And I know some people are going to question, like, how many great defensive end pass rushes did he see in the Pac-12, which is a fair question mark. But when you watch his film, I think that the flashes are exceptional. The upside is out of this world. Everything's there for Penei Sewell. I've been a huge fan of him. For me, if we're not taking positional value into the conversation with the Trevor Lawrence, because obviously Trevor Lawrence is going to be first on the board playing quarterback, I think that Penei Sewell is the best football player in this draft, regardless of draft bump based upon positional value.
Love it, bro. You make me the happiest man in the world with that. Okay, so let's just stick with tackle because I'm leading somewhere after we're done with tackle. How does your 2 to 5 round out? And I know we talked about it privately, but can you lay out your thoughts on Rashawn Slater to everyone? Because I know Daniel Jeremiah has put out the whole conflict. He's the one who started the conflict of Rashawn or Penei. So can you just give me your thoughts on Rashawn Slater, and then how does your 2 to 5 tackle board play out?
Yeah, so I number 2, I have Samuel Cosmi out of Texas, who actually had an outstanding pro day today. I think he ran like 4.84 at over 310 pounds. Like, he's an athlete, man. Like, he fits that whole mold of a blind side protector. He's got all the talent in the world. I have Christian Darrisaw from Virginia Tech, number 3, who been one of the biggest risers in the class, obviously, because he went into the year probably like a day 3 level player with some upside. And now he left. He kind of put it all together a little bit from Virginia Tech this year. He kind of has a little bit of Dwayne Brown to his game that was also a Virginia Tech Hokie back in the day, who's been a very successful offensive tackle in the league for a long time. So I'm a fan of Christian Darrisaw. And then number 4, I have Tevin Jenkins, who's a guy that's going to be a little bit of a funky eval from Oklahoma State, just because from what I hear, he has shorter arms than what is the threshold for an offensive tackle that you want. But for me, I don't see the concerns on film. I don't see him getting outreached, working laterally. Like, I think that even with the shorter arms, quote unquote, I don't think that it necessarily hinders him in any way. And he is the nastiest run blocker in the entire draft. I think that right tackle, I think some teams will value him inside at guard. I think that either way, he is going to be a starting caliber player pretty early on in his career. And then the last guy that I have down. Sorry, just lost the list. I have down Spencer Brown from Northern Iowa. I know I'm going to be a lot higher on him than some people. I know some people have Dylan Radins and Jalen Mayfield and some other guys, and I do like Mayfield a good bit. But for me, Spencer Brown from Northern Iowa is a guy that did not play in 2020 because of the Northern Iowa season FCS team, obviously, getting pushed to the spring. But when we're talking from physical perspective, 34-plus inch arms, 6'8", very athletic, former high school tight end, actually played 8-man football in Lenox, Iowa, and, just grew and kept growing when he got to Northern Iowa. They thought he was going to play defensive end at one point. Like, what position is he going to play? He eventually molds into an offensive tackle. I gave him a comp to Mike McGlinchey. I think that he reminds me so much of Mike McGlinchey's starting offensive tackle for the San Francisco 49ers now. I'm a big fan of Spencer. I think he has the ability that he could be one of the biggest risers in the future, right? Because obviously right now, what's he going to do at the pro day? I think he's going to test exceptionally well. Could he rise up boards late here? He absolutely could. But long-term potential, I think he rivals some of the best in this class. I think that he has all the talent, all the makeup. I think he could potentially play left tackle if he wanted to, just from a physical perspective and from a talent perspective. I'm a big fan of Spencer Brown, have been for a long time. Great young man as well. Been able to interview him a few times. I'm very much sold on him, especially when he gets with an NFL coaching staff, NFL weight and training staff, because the kid is very strong, the kid's very athletic. But once he masters the technical aspects of the NFL of the offensive tackle position, I think that talent level is just going to be unlocked to a much higher degree.
And then my final question before we get into the third pick here is, because this name has been popping up too, and I love this kid. I'm a Gators fan. Do you have Pitts as a tight end or a receiver?
I'm as a tight end. I understand why people want to talk about it, because literally you could project him to playing slot, you could project him to playing X, in line. He can play all over the place. For me, he's a mismatched weapon. So if you want to throw an offensive weapon, an OW next to his name, that's fine. But I do have him great as a tight end, because I do think, although his best attributes are obviously playing in space, being that dynamic receiving weapon, I think he's a better blocker than people give him credit for.
I agree.
I'm not saying that he is anything where he's going to be one of the best inline blockers in the NFL, but there's effort there. There's good body positioning there. He just has a thin lower half. He doesn't have a ton of power in his frame. So that's never going to be his calling card and his strength, where you're going to want to line him up in line, 90% of the snaps or anything like that, like anything crazy. But I think he's better than people act like. I think he has effort in the area, and the dynamic weapon that he could be down the seam, working against tight ends. Working against tight ends, working against linebackers, working against safeties. The mismatch potential he has is off the charts. It's special.
And just for clarity, because people have asked, you have Rashawn Slater as a guard, correct?
Yes. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yes, I do have him in at guard. This was before, he measured in with 33 flat, inch arms on the dot at yesterday's pro day. I think that he can play tackle. I think that some teams definitely value him there. I think he can play it. But for me, when you ask me what Rashawn Slater does best, short setting in pass pro, working backside cutoff and in outside and inside zone, that what he does best for me is a better fit inside. There's a temperament to projection as well, which people don't talk about outside of physical traits. Like, how does a player play? Does he what is his style? For me, what Rashawn Slater does best is potentially special inside. And then you're getting into the conversation for me. I think he could be a good guard. I think he could be I think he could be a good tackle. I think he could be a special guard. For me, you put the player where they fit best. And I just think that Rashawn inside is a potentially special player, one of the best guards in the NFL potentially down the line.
Robert Hunt. Guys, so far we're only a half hour in. If you've been listening to Ryan, and has it clicked to you that this man's aptitude is through the freaking roof? I don't know how to help you, man. We're a half hour in, and you're already one of my favorite guests ever. This is amazing stuff. Okay, so we've talked about the tackle position. We've talked about Kyle Pitts. We've talked about the wide receivers. Okay, you're in Miami. You're sitting at 3. We've talked about the offensive line. You thought what the Tua had. We've also talked about the receiving core. Are you trading back, or are you digging in and taking, your best receiver available, or are you taking Penei Sewell?
It really all depends on what the Jets do it too, man. I'm very curious to see what they do, because I think that they're going to sit there and I think they're going to take a quarterback. I think that's going to happen. But you just keep hearing maybe they're just going to stay pack and take Penei Sewell. Maybe that's just what they're going to do. They're going to see what they have in Sam Darnold. I don't know what's going to happen there. I assume that it's going to be a quarterback. If you're sitting there and Penei Sewell's there, I don't blame them for taking him. I really don't, because again, I think he potentially is the best player on the board, regardless of position. For me, though, I think that Miami might be in a position, this is playing with fire a little bit. I think they might be in a position where, hey, if you trade back a couple spots, you might still be able to get Penei Sewell if there's a run on quarterbacks early. So, hey, maybe you get an extra couple picks, plus you get Penei Sewell in a perfect world. But if Penny's your guy, you stick at 3 and you take him, because if he is worth that to you, and for you he is the absolute best player on your board and your top priority, then you sit there and take him. You don't play with fire. But for me, I think that trading back would be a great option. I would definitely at least explore it, see how I think the board's going to fall, because I think that number 30 overall pick is going to be a big suitor for a quarterback, because then you have Atlanta, who's been rumored to, hey, that might be a good spot for Justin Fields or Trey Lance as the developmental guy behind Matt Ryan. Now, if the Jets take a quarterback at 2, you're talking about 3 of the first 4 picks are quarterbacks. So, hey, sit back. The only problem is if you go back too far, well, actually, you can't go back further than Cincinnati if you want Penei Sewell, because Penei Sewell is going to be off the board with Cincinnati. So I think that if Penei Sewell's your guy, you stick there. If you're okay exploring other options like a Jamar Chase or a Jalen Waddle, a wide receiver there, then you go back and you play with fire a little bit. But for me, I would definitely at least explore every option, because I think that there are going to be a ton of suitors for that 3rd overall pick.
Mm-hmm. I want to just sticking with that 3rd overall pick.
Yep.
So you think there's going to be a lot of movement up for quarterbacks? And when last year, where everyone, there were quarterback needy teams, but, specifically the Dolphins and the Chargers, we stood pat and let Tua and Herbert fall as they may. You think, and I think we can both make the argument, if he wasn't injured, Tua's you already said it, Tua's better than everyone behind Trevor. You could even make the argument that, and I had Herbert as my quarterback 4. I had Love as 3, Burrow as 2, and 2 as 1. You could even make the argument that Herbert, given his athleticism, his athletic profile, his arm, is a more intriguing prospect than Zach Will. And I'm big on Zach Wilson. On Zach Will, and I'm big on Fields and Trey Lance. So you could even make the argument he's more of an intriguing prospect than those guys were. You think this is going to be a much more active draft than last year's was?
I do. I think that we would have saw a lot more movement last year, but we were working in the first COVID draft, right? The first fully virtual draft, where people, honestly, front offices are just trying to figure out the working fully virtually. Like, they have so much on their plate. I feel like that affected their ability and their want to make a ton of trades, because I think that they were just trying to figure it out. There was a lot of moving parts. There was a lot of unanswered questions. They weren't comfortable in that skin. This year, they've been fully prepared. If at that point now, where I think that they're going to be a lot more comfortable in their own skin, in what they're doing to make a lot more movement. I absolutely do think there's going to be a ton of movement up top. There was none last year, I think, until pick like 14, 15. Like, there was a long wait until the first trade of the night. But I think that there's going to be at least 2 in the top 10, because I think that there are going to be a couple quarterback needy teams that are going to make that jump, whether that is the Philadelphia Eagles, which I'm still sold on. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to take a quarterback. I know that's kind of a hot take a little bit, but then also Carolina Panthers, Denver Broncos. There's a couple teams that could be potentially on the move.
I'm with you, brother. I'm not, coming out, and still after that first game, he turned into what I saw at Alabama. I'm not a Jalen Hurts guy. I'm just not. I don't think he has the arm. All right. So we talked about what you would do at 3. All right. The interesting pick, though, here is number 18, because the board may fall where, guys like Joseph Asai are there, who I think would be a perfect edge guy in our 3-4. You got a guy like Kwity Paye might fall. And, given the character concerns, there's been a lot of rumblings that Micah Parsons might fall. Is that a pick where you could see a defensive-minded coach like Flores going off script if one of those edges, or even a guy like Zavin Collins, like we talked before we went live here, you think he's a perfect fit, even though you like Nick Bolton better, just like me. I love that kid. Do you think they could go off script there and maybe go away from offense and take one of those guys?
It's obviously a big hypothetical without knowing where exactly they go number 3. I think if Micah Parsons is there, though, you sprint to the podium. Like, there's no question in my mind. He could. I'm a big Micah Parsons guy. I don't want to speak to the off the field concerns and the character issues that have kind of been inkling out there on the football field. That kid could play anywhere in a 4-3. Mike Sam will. He could play inside or outside in a 3-4 potentially. Like, he has the ability, in my opinion, to play any linebacker position in any system. He's that type of football player. Whether it is for Miami or a traditional 4-3 team or whatever have you, Micah Parsons is a potentially special football player. So if he's sitting there in Miami at 18, you sprint to the podium. Now, if you went Penei Sewell the first pick and Micah Parsons isn't there, I think we had to see what the wide receiver board looks like. Is Rashad Bateman there? Is this a point where you're comfortable taking Terrace Marshall? Because he is kind of what you need with the speed element and the vertical element that he does have, even though he's a bigger body. That is, for me, you have to leave the first round with a wide receiver. Because although it is a deep draft, it's a very talented group. I think that Miami really needs to try to get one of those top 4 wide receivers. I think that they desperately need one of them.
What are your thoughts? Okay, what are your thoughts on 18? There's been a lot of talk with Najee Harris. Yeah, well, I told everyone prepare for when my big board drops that Javonte Williams might be the number one running back 1 for me. What are your thoughts on the running back situation if we don't get an Aaron Jones? Are you high on Najee?
Yeah, no, I mean, I like all 3 of the top guys. I would be comfortable taking Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, or Travis Etienne in the late first round. Like, I absolutely would. I think that they are the 3 best running backs in this class, in my opinion, by a decent margin from that drop off to 3 to 4. I'm not a fan of taking one there at 18.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're a trade back candidate, maybe at 18 instead, like you stay pack at 3 and now you want to trade back from 18 and you're in the 20s, maybe. But I think that for Miami, because I think they have pick 36 overall.
Sir. Yes, sir.
So for me, best player available there that hits some type of need for you. And then you take one, because there's good odds there that one of those 3, Harris, Williams, or Etienne, will be there at 36. I just feel like 18's a little too rich in my blood for any 3 of them.
Yeah, I've been telling people, because if you look at what the Bills said about addressing the running back position heading into the offseason, I truly believe Najee will not make it past Pittsburgh. And I actually would not be surprised if Javonte Williams does not make it past the Buffalo Bills. What did you think of Etienne's pro day coming in at 215 and running a 4.4? A 4.44 and a 4.45 or what the 2 times were by the 2 different scouts. And if he dropped down to about his 205 playing weight, do you think he could have broke the 4.3s?
I think he would have ran easily in the 4.3s if he was, 200 to 205, like he had played most. I think they said throughout most of the year he played at like 199 or something like that, which is, hey, it doesn't matter at the end of the day for me.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the video of him racing Isaiah Simmons, who ran like a 4.39 or whatever it was. So I think he's definitely a 4.3 athlete. Obviously, he wanted to come in and he wanted to quiet some concerns about the size profile. So he showed up at 215 and still ran in the mid 4.4s. So plenty fast enough. 250. I think that his play weight is going to be more around the 200 to 205 range anyway. So he's a 4.3 guy at around 200, 205 pounds. Dynamic element to his game. I just think that this was obviously a business decision to show up at 215 pounds today.
Yeah, we got 270 people in the room. Smash that like button. Okay, so what are your thoughts on Kenneth Gainwell?
I like Kenny a lot. Kenny's actually my 4th ranked guy. There's a significant drop off from 3 to 4 because then we're talking about the top 3 guys have potential to be every down backs, quote unquote, high volume guys. For me, then we're getting into the niche roles. We're getting into guys that are going to be early down runners that can give you some carries. They're going to be space players that can, dominate on 3rd down. For me, Kenny Gainwell has a good balance. Could he be a every down back in some committee approaches? I think that he could. Like, he could be that high volume carrier. But for me, he's that space guy. Like, they literally would, run jet sweeps to him. They would run him traditionally as a running back. They would put him out into the boundary and throw back shoulders to him. Like, he has an all-around skill set, which is very exciting. And I think that he's another one, opted out of 2020. So he's a guy that's kind of out of sight, out of mind. But for me, he's a very talented football player who, if you need a guy that can dominate in space, you can manipulate space a little bit for you. Kenny Gainwell is a very good football player.
Yeah. And we talked about it before we went live here. You identified the center position, obviously, in Miami. It's something that needs to be upgraded. I've been a proponent of the number one free agent I want is Corey Linsley, especially because we're going to be running a lot of screens and RPOs this year. First of all, before we get into the draft, what are just your overall thoughts of Corey Linsley?
Oh, Linsley's a rock solid center. He's been that way for Green Bay Packers for a long time. Coming out of Ohio State, he's a very, very solid football player. Very good football player too. But just he gives you that element of like you never have to worry about center, right? Like he might not be the most dynamic center of all time, might not be the most flashy center of all time, but like you never have to worry about him a day in your life. Like he's just going to do his job, and you're going to be content, and he's going to be that leader up front that you need. And Miami's missed that guy. Like they need to find that guy for me. That is one of their biggest needs. And I need that. People don't talk about it enough because they really need an upgraded center. They absolutely do. So Linsley would be a great fit. I think there's also a couple guys maybe in the second, third round of this draft that potentially could help you down the road. I really think that I like a lot of what Miami is doing on the offensive line. It's just missing like one or two pieces, and then that's going to take them over top potentially.
And quickly, what are your thoughts on Isaiah Wilson, the right tackle we just acquired?
Yeah, I think I had a late third round grade on him. So when they picked him in the first rounds, it was obviously a reach. I sold myself on, hey, with how Tennessee plays football, with that power running scheme, like that is the best fit for what Isaiah Wilson does well. So like it's a good fit. So maybe it will work. I was never a fan of the value of the selection. Like I don't think that he was worthy of that pick. And it's troubling because can he, from a physical perspective, if he gets some things ironed out, technically play at the NFL level? Yeah, absolutely. Like he has size, he has enough athleticism. Like there are things to work with there. He has long arms. Like there's building blocks. There's a foundation there. It is very troubling when a first round pick though plays 3 snaps during a football season and gets out of the organization only a year here now, not even a full year. So this is more of a demons off the field type of conversation. Like I think that he can play at the NFL level. The question is, how much is he committed to it? How much does he love the game? And is he willing to learn from the mistakes that he's made so far?
Agreed. Okay, so let's get back to center. Who's your center one in this draft?
I love Josh Myers from Ohio State. I know some people, I haven't heard anybody else have that one, which is
I haven't. One.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, Creed Humphrey's been the guy for a lot of people for a long time from Ohio State. From Oklahoma. Josh Myers being from Ohio State, and then obviously the flavor of the year now is of course the UW Whitewater kid, right? Who went down to the Senior Bowl, and Quinn Miners was maybe the biggest winner of anybody down in Mobile, and looks like he'd been a very good starting center potentially in the NFL level. For me, that's a little bit of a projection still. I think Josh Myers had 2 good years of tape of Ohio State. He wasn't great down the stretch of 2020, but from my understanding, he was dealing with an injury down the stretch. He has the size profile right around 6'5", kind of looks similarly physically to an Alex Mack, who's been a very good center in the NFL for a long time. I think that he could play in either a power or a zone heavy scheme. I think that he's pretty scheme diverse. I think he's rock solid. I think he could even play guard in a pinch if you needed him to, because he actually he was a tackle recruit that moved to guard, then moved to center because that was just where he fit best and where they needed the upgrade on the Ohio State offensive line. So I really value what Josh Myers is health-wise. We'll see what's happening with him, but I think that he is a very good player that's going to be a rock solid starter for a long time.
Are you high on Landon Dickerson?
I'm actually not comparative to a lot of people. It was funny. I remember, I think it was Dane Brugler that said of the Athletic, said he's like a top 35 player to him. Obviously Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl is a huge Landon Dickerson fan. I like Landon. I do. I mean, like he's an offensive line coach's dream. He is the most physical dude, plays his tail off. Like there are so many things to like about him. I think he's a little bit of a laboring mover. I don't think he moves well laterally. I think there's just a little bit of clunkiness to him. And then, I mean, he hasn't finished the season. He's been hurt every single year. And at some point that goes into the equation, into the conversation there. So how durable is he going to be? What is his scheme versatility? I think that some teams, specifically gap power schemes, are really going to value a ton of what he does. But I do not value him nearly as high as some people do.
Interesting. All right, so let's move to linebacker. Who is your top linebacker in this draft? Your linebacker one.
Yeah, it's Micah Parsons. I kind of talked about him, already. I think that he could potentially play Mike Samwell in a 4-3. I think that he could play both inside and outside, whether that be as a Sam or as a weak side rush. Like I think that he can do so many things. So he's my top guy. And, I don't think that people are giving him the credit that he deserves because he's only been playing off ball linebacker after playing defensive end in high school. He's only been playing it for 2 years. And the tape that we saw in 2019 for being a guy that had only been playing it for, his second year is phenomenal. He's super athletic. A scout buddy that I talked to gave him a comparison to Patrick Willis. And obviously that is high praise. I think that he, again, not taking the bump in positional value into conversation. I think he's a top 5 player in this draft. I think he's that special. I think that a team, if they're comfortable with the off the field stuff, is going to get not only a great linebacker, but a potential face of their defense for a long time.
Is Jay okay to you? Is he basically the jack of all trades, master of none?
I'm actually a Notre Dame fan, so I watch them a ton. Jock is he plays rover in their 4-2-5 defense at Notre Dame, right? He was a safety recruit who they found a spot for him. He's a rover in their defense. Is he a safety technically? No, he's a Sam that's displaced as an overhang defender. So yeah, but also no. Is he a safety technically? No. So he's a positionless football player, but a team like a Carolina Panthers with Matt Rule that has dubbed that defense, right, the positionless football players. Like we want Jeremy Chin to play all over the place. Like I think that role fits him really well. But I mean, Jock for me, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is not going to be a guy that you're going to throw in at Mike linebacker, and he's going to be your Mike linebacker a ton of the time. He's going to be a Will, or he's going to be an undersized Sam, kind of a la like the Carolina Panthers even do with Shaq Thompson and have done for him for a while. So he is an outside linebacker. How you want to label him is tough. For me, he's a potentially dynamic second-level defender who has great closing speed, coverage versatility, and just gives you a lot of versatility, not only from a playing perspective, but you can do a lot just from alignment. Like you can play a lot of different sub-package roles. You can do a lot of things with a guy like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Just a couple questions here because I know I was taking about an hour of your time here. Safety is clearly a position we have depth concerns at. Who's your top safety in this class? And on top of that, if it isn't, what are your thoughts on a guy like Javon Holland who, he can play in the box, he can play single high, he can play in the slot. He's even got snaps out on the boundary. So who's your top safety in this class? I'm going to guess it's going to be Trevon Moore. And what are your thoughts on a guy like Javon Holland who, we've talked about a few players that didn't play this year, so people might have forgot about them.
Yeah, so I guess people are going to be a little shocked by my answer here. My top safety actually is Andre Cisco, not taking
from Syracuse
the conversation. Yeah, he is. So he's not going to be for everyone. He takes chances, but he also had 13 interceptions in 24 games. Like he turns the football over. There's special traits there athletically. Trevon Merrick, actually, I think is how you pronounce it. Trevon Merrick is the safest safety for me, right? Like I know I'm going to get a starting caliber, super dependable safety for a long time. I am just kind of moving to the upside at the position of an Andre Cisco because I don't want to miss on him, to be honest. Because I am, for being an independent scout, not working for a team, I can go for the upside a little bit sometimes because I'm not going to get fired if the guy doesn't turn out to be right. So I'm gonna couple for upside a little bit sometimes. Andre Cisco for me is, if he hits a ceiling, has the highest ceiling of any safety in this class. Javon Holland was a very tough evaluation for me because Oregon used him mostly as a slot defender and a nickel. And I don't think that he has the quick twitch to him to play that role to start out with. And then I didn't see a ton of range on the back end and deep safety. So I'm looking at him and I'm saying, could he be very good as a short zone safety that can play some robber coverage, could play underneath zones and play underneath on tight ends and a little bit in the slot at times, I think he can be successful in there because I think that his feel in zone is outstanding, short zones. Like he has some great eyes, great discipline. He's a guy that also forces turnovers. For me, though, I just didn't see enough of a wide scope of impact from a guy like Javon Holland to get me super excited. I think he's very solid. I think that a team's going to take him on day 2, and they're going to be happy with the role that he plays.
Mhm.
I just don't think that he has a well-rounded game or a high impact in multiple roles at the next level, if that makes sense.
All right. So just literally 3 more questions for you here. What's
Sure.
the strongest position in terms of depth in this class to you?
It's probably wide receiver if you're looking at it. I mean, there's just so much depth. I mean, 2020 was an outstanding wide receiver class, and I would say that 2021 mirrors that very well. I might even prefer 2021 at the top at least, and then the depth I think is pretty similar. Um, that's probably the answer. Linebackers, I want to mention the linebacker class because I think it's outstanding, and it hasn't been for the last couple of years. So the depth there is incredible. I think cornerback has been a lot better than I thought. I think there's a lot of depth at the cornerback position. And interior offensive lineman for me is another one. So, like, there's a few that have a lot of depth, but if you had to ask me the absolute best one, I would say probably wide receiver.
Okay, you added another question from what your
Okay.
answer. Sorry, brother.
Sure.
We've been heavily linked to Asante Samuel Jr.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on Asante Samuel Jr. and how do you rank him compared? I'm not that high on Patrick Surtain. Now I am high on Farley and I am high on JC Horn. What are your thoughts of Asante Samuel Jr. and how does he stack up against those top 3 guys?
My original thoughts going in, leaving the summer was I thought Asante Samuel Jr. was going to be a purely inside cornerback because he just lacked size. Like that was just kind of my initial thoughts. Looking back on the film in 2020, I think that he's a guy that can play a little inside, a little outside. Like I think he can kind of be a versatile piece for you. If he's going to be on the outside the majority of the time, it's going to have to be a zone heavy team. It's just going to have to be because I don't think that he has the length and physicality to match up outside all the time against some of the bigger wide receivers that he's going to be matched up against. But I think that if you're running a heavy cover 2 scheme where you're asking him to keep good vision, can come down and condense, I think that he can do a lot of good things, and he has good ball skills, and he's a very physical defensive back. So I think that he can be a little bit of a Jason Verrett clone to a degree, and he can play some inside outside. But for me, it's going to have to be a little more of a scheme specific if you're playing him on the outside full time.
You think he could transition to free safety because a coach like Flo loves doing that?
Could he play safety? Yeah, I don't see why not. Because again, he's a good tackler. He's got a feel in zone. Like there's building blocks there. I would say that probably inside at nickel would be a better spot than like a true playing on the roof, playing deep zone. Like I don't think that's going to be his game. I think that again, I want him kind of moving forward. I don't really want him moving backward a ton and kind of unloosening his hips. Like I don't think that's his game. But I do think that there is definitely versatility for him for sure.
All right, last 2 questions, I swear. So I've identified Rondelle Moore, Jalen Waddle, and Kyle Pitts, and Pitts more size and just the things he can do at his size as the most dynamic receivers. No wide receiver, but receivers in this class. Who would be the most dynamic receivers in this class to you? Would it be those 3 guys, or is there another name that you think I'm forgetting?
I think Jalen Waddle for me, Kyle Pitts is probably number 1 when you take into account of like his ability to be a mismatch player, working the seam against linebackers, which he's going to be just so much more athletic than. He's probably the most dynamic receiver, quote unquote, again, offensive weapon, like wherever you want to phrase him as, biggest mismatch. But then I would say Jalen Waddle is probably in the traditional term of dynamic is probably number 1, just because, I mean, that guy is equally as fast as he is cat quick. Like he is a dynamic player in space. So he would be one of the guys I would definitely mention. Rondelle Moore for completely different reasons. He's like a exclusive yak guy. Like he is going to break a ton of tackles. And then I would throw Jamar Chase out there. I really would, just because I think that he is a multi-level threat. I think that he has more vertical speed than maybe people give him credit for. But I think that he affects the game in so many different areas and so many different areas of the field that is potentially special.
All right. Okay, so my last question for you, and this is a good one. Who are some of your favorite day 3 sleepers in this draft?
How much time we got?
You got all the time you need, brother.
I wrote down a few guys at different positions just because honestly, if you would have thrown out just like a position, I could have probably given you a couple guys. So let's work from offense to defense. I had a
Let's
couple
do it.
running backs. I kind of did it off of a little bit off a need for Miami, what they could potentially be looking at. So a couple day 3 guys that I actually put out a tweet maybe a month ago at this point. Like, it's a copycat league, so everybody's gonna be trying to find their James Robinson this year, right? Like, they're gonna be trying to find that late round, the UDFA that could potentially outplay his perceived valuation. So Elijah Mitchell, who's at the Senior Bowl, Louisiana kid, running back. He's about 5'11", 220 pounds. I really like Elijah Mitchell a ton. I think that he is dependable. I think he could be a volume getter. And then he went to the Senior Bowl, and there were some reps in the passing game. Like, he ran a seam against Jacoby Stevens, the safety from LSU, where he, dusted him a little bit, had a huge catch. So I think there's a little more dynamic element to Elijah. I don't think that he has the best second and third gear of all time as a runner. I think he's more of a one-speed player. But I think that he is going to be a day 3 find for a team that's going to run the ball a ton more in 2021 than maybe people realize. Jared Doakes is another running back from Cincinnati who he's dealt with so many injuries. So the question is, like, where are you going to value him? Because running back is already a short shelf life position. And then on top of that, he's had some injuries. So, like, where is the valuation for him? I really like his tape, though. I really do. He's another guy that's right around 220 pounds. Really quick feet for his size. A lot quicker than you would think. Contact balance is exceptional. And he averaged like 14 yards a catch this year. So he can catch the football a little bit. He's got a little juice to him out in space as well. Jared Doakes, for me, might be the running back that maybe doesn't get to the second contract, but for a first contract might make you a very happy team. Tamarian Terry, the guy that everyone has forgot about out of Florida State.
Terry.
Man, Scary Terry, when he is healthy, he is very good. He has some issue with drops. It's at points, it's more concentration than it is just bad ball skills, in my opinion. And then he had the bizarre year from Florida State, which, basically anybody outside of Asante Samuel Jr. hurt your stock this year if you play for Florida State. So I think Tamarian Terry, though, is a day 3 gamble. The kid is a legit 6'3" plus, running 4.3, potentially 4.4. Like, he is a very nice athlete. Zach Davidson, tight end out of Central Missouri, former punter at Central Missouri as well, was an all-conference punter 3 times. Last year in college in 2019, he almost had 900 yards and 15 touchdowns, averaged over 20 yards a catch, 6'6", 248 pounds, has some athleticism to him. He's a guy that I think people need to start taking attention to because he didn't play in 2020 as a Division II kid, but there are traits to work with there. And then we mentioned him before the show a little bit. I had him written down. Robert Hainsey from Notre Dame was a right tackle who went to the Senior Bowl. I expected him to play inside a guard because he's only got 32-inch arms. But then he plays center, and he looks damn good at center. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, we might have something there. So he's a guy as a developmental center on day 3, might be a good player to take a look at. Garrett Wallow, linebacker from TCU. I'm sorry, I told you I got a little bit of a list here. Garrett Wallow,
brother. I love
from TCU, was a former safety who had played kind of like their big nickel early on in his TCU career and just kept getting bigger and bigger. Now he's up to about 230 pounds, and he just has very smooth hips, kind of hits that modern mold of a linebacker. Really nice young man as well. He's got a good head on his shoulders. Garrett Wallow, number 30 from TCU, is really fun player to watch on film. I would recommend. Nashon Wright, who's a cornerback out of Oregon State. He's listed on their roster at 6'4". And I will tell you, a lot of those roster heights and weights are a little fudged, but I will say that his 6'4" is pretty legit. Like, I would say he's probably at least 6'3". He is going to be a guy that cover 3 heavy teams, cover 3 heavy systems are going to really like a lot because of that length and that feel in zone. But he was a track star in high school. So I think that he's got a little better athleticism than people give him credit for. His brother was actually featured on this past season of Last Chance U out in California. Rajon Wright, who is also Oregon State Beaver as well now. So Nashon Wright, I think, is a developmental guy on day 3 who hasn't played a ton of football with the condensed season with the Pac-12 this year, but has some talent. And the last guy who I actually just had the privilege of interviewing is Talanoa Hufanga, who is a safety out of USC, who I think a lot of teams are going to value him differently as a safety, as a weak side linebacker, like wherever. He is very intelligent, seems to always be in the right place, runs the alley like a bat out of hell. He has had some ball production this year, which he hadn't had an interception his first 2 years, but has 4 interceptions and 6 pass breakups this year. Starts showing a little more versatility than we had seen from a guy like Hufanga. And I'll just say that he has everything. He has everything together. Just talking to him, being able to speak to him a little bit. He's actually training one-on-one with Troy Polamalu throughout this whole process as well, which is a ton of fun. And a guy that I know growing up was a big role model for him. So that would be my last guy that I just want to throw out as a day 3 potential player that I think could outplay their draft valuation.
Man, that's a hell of a list, my friend. That's fantastic stuff. Because you actually gave me a few names on that list that I haven't looked into yet. So I haven't watched Wallow. So I got to check him out now because of what you said. Man, I appreciate you for coming on and doing this because, I'm a fan of what you guys do. I think 2 years in a row now I've bought the NFL Draft Bible just to support you guys. And plus, I know you guys do such great work over there. I was so excited when my friend Dante joined up with you guys, because I actually host a podcast on the Brawl Network where he came from with Richmond Webb. So I was I was banging the drums behind the scenes of, Dante's going to be superstar. Don't let him go. Don't let him go. And they let him go. And I was just like, you guys messed up. So I'm just so glad that he's with other great minds like yourself, man. You guys do such good work over there. And Ryan, the floor is yours. Promote anything you have out, anything you have coming out, and go ahead and promote your Twitter. I'm going to put it up on the screen for people, and it is in the description below.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Rise and Draft on Twitter. Everything NFL Draft Bible that we're doing right now, we are powered by Sports Illustrated. And I mean, like Reason said, we have the NFL Draft Bible publication that is available for purchase. It's got over 500 prospects in there, interviews, rankings, mock draft. Like, it's got a little bit of everything for you. I would definitely go take a look. We also have daily content at si.com/NFL/draft. If you want your weekly mock draft, your team specific mock drafts, your feature pieces, positional rankings, whatever you want, we have it. And I would definitely recommend it. At least go take a look and see if you like it.
Yeah. And I would recommend all of you right now, go follow this man on Twitter. I'm not lying. I'm not gassing. This man is a great follow, worth your time, great insight, great takes, and his interviews are really great too. Ryan, again, I appreciate you so much for coming on here, and hopefully after the draft, you can come back here and we can look back at what happened, man. I can't tell you enough. We got almost 300 people in the room right now. You're an absolute pleasure to talk to, and you're just a pleasure to listen to, my friend. Like, I could sit here and listen you go off for hours, my friend. You are just so. Someone said in the comment, they just said, you basically you're talking about you're going off like novels about prospects, and you didn't say once. And you articulate yourself very, very well, my friend. You are an absolute pleasure to have on here, and I hope and pray you will come back one day, man, because it was just awesome having you on, and to pick that high aptitude of yours was an absolute pleasure, my friend. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really appreciate you first and foremost for having me on. I appreciate that compliment. It's doing so many interviews over the year, you kind of try to eliminate some of those fillers. So I appreciate that. It's been a lot of work, but it's always fun I looked up and we're over an hour here. So this was a lot of fun. It went by very fast. And I really appreciate you for having me on tonight.
Thank you, my friend. I hope you have a good night, and I hope everything goes well with the little one, my friend.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Have a good night, my friend.
You too.
Guys, you need to go follow him right now on Twitter. Stop what you're doing. Go follow him. Go show him some love. Thank you to Nico and Chef Jew. I believe they became new members tonight. Guys, the membership, $2.99, $4.99, $6.99 is available. That's how you get those emojis, those badges next to your name, and you help support the channel. And you will also be you're not going to get as many perks as the Patreons have, but you will be added to the private streams that I'm going to be having with the Patreons. But, the Patreons, they have first dibs in terms of coming back here and getting up on to screen. They also have the ability at certain levels to basically come on here and have not only shows with me, but give me ideas of show topics that they would like to see. So there are more perks to the Patreon, but hey, if you don't want to become a Patreon, the membership levels are available. And I love all of y'all that have done both. I appreciate you guys. You are going to be the ones that help me eventually get to, guys, when everything's normal, boots are going to be on the ground at training camp and during the season. Okay. If you guys haven't seen yet, I'm sitting on Zooms because I have press access. So, you guys are going to be the ones that allow me to do this and give you better in-depth coverage. And, we're moving up, man. We got Eric Crocker will be here tomorrow, former NFL DB and AFL DB, and he breaks down film, does a great job. He will be here tomorrow night at 8:30, and I will be picking his brains. It's going to be a lot of secondary and wide receiver heavy. So it's going to be an interesting little show that we got going on tomorrow night. And then next Wednesday, guys, obviously I'll be here on Monday as usual, but next Wednesday, guys, hey, you already know what the deal is. It's going to be free agency opens up at about 4 p.m. Eastern, but at 2 p.m. Eastern, Benjamin Albright, one of the best insiders in the game and in the industry, will be on here. We'll be talking about what he's hearing with the Dolphins. We'll go into the draft. We'll go into free agency. So we're going to be picking his brain. I can't wait to have that. And then I got to text him. But last time I texted him when we talked, Quinn Meneras, he will be here as well. We already talked about him tonight too. So, you can look out for Quinn's going to be coming in the next couple weeks. You guys already know I want him drafted so badly to this team. Love the way that kid plays. And shout out to Ouroboros X. He says, if Micah Parsons isn't there and you can get Dylan Moses in the later round, I think he's worth putting some effort into in the third or late second. I agree. And you know what, Ouroboros? I really agree with where you ranked Dylan Moses in terms of the late second, third, because that's basically where my grade is on Dylan Moses right now, which is crazy. It's kind of a fall from grace because I had him with a first round grade heading into this year. And you know what I love about having a guy like, that on here? If you look, a lot of Ryan's evaluations lined up with mine, and I love seeing that. You know what I mean? Obviously, the Jamar Chase is a different thing for us, but I'm not going to push back on him. He does a damn good job. He's better at this than me. I'm not going to push back on that. And at the end of the day, we have the same top 5 guys in the receiving core in our top 5. Just Chase is the only one that is kind of graded differently for us. But other than that, we're pretty much dead on. Man, I loved having Ryan on today. It was an absolute pleasure. He's an absolute fantastic evaluator, absolutely fantastic tape watcher. And really, it doesn't get much better than a guy like that. So, and shout out to Mighty Dolphin for becoming the latest YouTube member. I appreciate you, my guy. So, guys, I am going to be out of here, and I'm going to be back tomorrow night, 8:30, with Eric Crocker of the Croc Report, and we're going to go over that. It's going to be a good one. You're not going to want to miss it. Former NFL, former AFL DB will be here tomorrow night. So until tomorrow night, y'all already know what time it is. It's Fins Up all day, every day, baby. And, I might open it up for you guys a little bit, tomorrow night after, depending on how long me and Eric go. But, that's a show. I'm telling y'all, if you enjoyed this one, you're going to enjoy tomorrow's just as much. And I promise you right now, the Jamar Chase take might be a little bit different from what we hear from Crocker tomorrow night. So I can't wait for y'all to hear what he has to take. I love bringing different perspectives to you guys, right? Like Dante's got a different perspective. Matt Valdivino's got a different perspective. Ryan's got a different perspective. And now I'm guaranteeing Eric's going to have a bit of a different perspective too. So I'm trying to give you guys perspectives from all these different directions so you can be informed, but just to inspire you to go out there, do the research, do the tape work yourself, and just use all these people, including myself, as reference points. Don't use this as gospel. Use this as reference points. That's all. But all right, guys, Fins Up all day, every day. I will see all of y'all tomorrow. And if news breaks in the day, you can bet your bottom dollar that your boy Reason will be here around lunchtime. But if not, I will see you tomorrow night at 8:30. Again, until tomorrow night, fins up, stay happy, healthy, safe, and blessed, my friends. Appreciate all.